Sierra, the bobcat, was about to have her babies after a pregnancy that no one had expected. But the people working at the Hillside Nature Reserve couldn't believe their eyes when they saw that something wasn't right with her baby kittens, and they knew they had to step in during what could turn into a very dangerous moment. Sierra, who was known for keeping to herself and being distant, had been watched closely for many weeks, and her strange behavior was confusing everyone who took care of the reserve. That afternoon, as the sun was getting lower, Dr. Mark Jensen, the vet who was there to help, and Lucas Bennett, the main expert on wild animals, stood just outside Sierra's enclosed area, watching her with growing worry. The bobcat, who usually kept quiet and stayed calm, was walking back and forth without stopping, and her smooth fur seemed to move with how tense she was. Her bright golden eyes, which were normally so peaceful and sharp, now looked troubled and unclear. Every now and then, she made deep, rough sounds from her throat that made everyone working at the reserve feel uncomfortable. For many hours, Sierra kept pacing around, only stopping for brief moments when she would crouch down close to the ground, and her tail would twitch and move in ways that seemed random. Mark and Lucas looked at each other with worried expressions as they both realized what was happening. Sierra was going into labor. They had known that she was going to have babies, but they hadn't been sure exactly when it would happen. This was happening sooner than anyone thought it would, and it made everyone on the staff rush around to get ready. "I thought we had at least another week," Lucas said quietly, his eyes never leaving Sierra. "So did I," Mark replied, checking his equipment. "But nature doesn't follow our schedules." The people working there had thought Sierra would give birth to maybe 2 or 3 kittens, judging by how big and round her belly had gotten. The medical tests they had done just a few days earlier hadn't shown any problems, but everyone was worried because she seemed so restless and because this was happening earlier than expected. When wild animals at reserves have babies, it's always hard to predict what will happen, and there was a lot at risk here. Sierra was an important part of what they were trying to do to protect and save these animals, because she had been saved from people who were illegally trapping animals for their fur, and they had helped her get better so she could live in this sanctuary that was partly wild. The place where she would give birth had been set up very carefully, with cameras put in so they could watch what was happening without bothering Sierra or getting in her space. The staff members watched nervously from the room where they could observe everything as Sierra finally went into the den, and her breathing came fast and seemed hard for her. The fact that Sierra was getting older made everyone even more concerned. She was 8 years old now, which meant she was getting close to being too old to have babies for a bobcat, so this pregnancy was seen as something wonderful but also risky. After she had been in labor for almost an hour, Sierra pushed really hard, and the first kitten came out. Everyone working there breathed out with relief when they saw the small, wet baby move around and make its first tiny crying sounds. Sierra right away started cleaning her kitten, using her rough tongue to carefully clean the delicate newborn baby. Not much time passed before a second kitten was born, and then a third one came after that. Every time a baby was born, everyone got excited as they watched the healthy little kittens wiggling around. By the time the fourth kitten came into the world, Sierra looked completely worn out and tired. Her slim body moved up and down with every breath as she pulled her kittens close to her, and her natural mothering instincts took control even though she was so exhausted. Mark and Lucas glanced at each other, amazed by the wonderful thing they had just seen happen. Having 4 kittens was really remarkable for a bobcat as old as she was, but Sierra still wasn't done. 4 kittens, Lucas whispered. "That's incredible for her age." "I know," Mark said, smiling. "She's doing beautifully." With one final deep, rough sound from her throat and one more strained push, she had a 5th kitten. Everyone in the room became completely quiet as the camera moved closer to show the newborn. Something was very wrong. The first 4 kittens were normal-sized, and their fur already had faint markings of spots and stripes showing, but this 5th one was shockingly small and weak-looking. The fur on its body was thin and came in patches, and you could see its pale skin underneath that looked almost see-through. The tiny creature hardly moved at all, and its little legs were loose and didn't seem to work right. Mark knew right away how serious this was. "That one's in trouble," he said under his breath, and he was already starting to get ready to do something about it. Lucas nodded with a grim look on his face, and after all his years of working with animals, he could tell that this kitten probably wouldn't make it. But before they could go near the enclosed area, they had to think about how Sierra might react, because she was a mother who would protect her babies fiercely. Even though Sierra was exhausted, she was paying attention to what was moving outside her den. Her sharp eyes followed everything the staff did, and her body would tense up and get defensive whenever anyone got too close. Bobcats, especially when they've just become mothers, are known for being impossible to predict. Nobody on the staff could know what Sierra might do if they tried to take the struggling kitten away from her. "We need to help that kitten," Mark said. "But if we go in there, she might attack us." "I know," Lucas answered. "But we can't just watch it die either." While they were trying to decide what to do next, something happened that nobody expected. Sierra moved away from where her kittens were, and her eyes stayed focused on the tiny, still figure of the 5th baby she had given birth to. She pushed it gently with her nose and made soft, sad sounds like she was trying to make it respond to her. When she heard the vet team coming closer, the way she reacted shocked everyone completely. Instead of getting aggressive and hostile, Sierra moved over to the side of the den, and the way her body looked showed she was uncertain but not threatening. It seemed like she somehow knew that the humans were coming to help. Seeing this as a good sign, Mark and Lucas moved forward carefully and cautiously. The other bobcats in the areas next to where Sierra was stayed silent and watched, and their usual restless behavior was replaced by a stillness that felt almost strange and spooky. Mark put on gloves and got ready in case Sierra resisted, and he slowly went into the den. Sierra watched him closely and with focus, but she didn't try to stop him as he gently picked up the weak kitten and backed away to the examination table they had set up close by. The feeling in the air was heavy and tense as Mark did a quick check of the kitten. The kitten's breathing was very shallow, and its tiny chest was barely moving up and down. It weighed much less than it should, and you could see its bones under its fragile skin. The staff worked quickly, giving it fluids through a tube and putting the kitten inside a heated box to make its body temperature go back to normal. Sierra stayed at the opening of her den, and her golden eyes were locked on the humans while they worked. Even though she seemed calm, the staff kept a respectful distance, because they knew that any quick movement could make her protective instincts come out. Hours went by and turned into days as the team put all their effort into saving the tiny kitten, and they decided to name it Cedar. The chances of it surviving were not good. Cedar had been born with something wrong inside its body that made it unable to drink milk from its mother properly, so it had to be fed through a tube and needed someone watching it all the time. The staff talked to experts on wildlife and animal doctors from all over the country, bringing together everything they knew to give Cedar the best possible chance of making it. "How's Cedar doing today?" Lucas asked one morning, walking into the medical area. "A little stronger," Mark said, adjusting the incubator temperature. "But it's still touch and go." While all this was happening, Sierra kept taking care of her other 4 kittens without ever stopping or giving up. She cleaned them, made sure they stayed warm, and watched over them with such careful attention that it was both beautiful to see and sad at the same time. She would often look over toward the area where Cedar was being taken care of, and it was clear that her mothering instincts reached out to her struggling kitten even though they were separated. Little by little, Cedar's conditions started to get better. The movements that had been so feeble before became stronger, and the soft cries it made got louder. The patchy fur began to fill in and grow, and its eyes, which had been closed tight since it was born, finally opened up and showed a pair of very bright blue irises. Every small improvement was met with careful hope by the team, and they had all become very attached to this little fighter. Bringing Cedar back to Sierra and the rest of the baby kittens was something that had to be done very carefully, and everyone knew this moment would decide everything. The connection between a mother bobcat and her babies is extremely important for how they grow and develop, and the team worried that keeping them apart for so long might have broken that connection. "Do you think she'll accept Cedar back?" one of the younger staff members asked nervously. "There's only one way to find out," Mark said, though his voice showed he was uncertain. The separation was long, and she might not recognize Cedar's scent anymore. Lucas nodded slowly. "And if she doesn't accept it, Cedar will never be able to live with its family." The weight of that possibility hung heavy in the air. When the day finally arrived, Mark carefully put Cedar down just a few feet away from Sierra, and he held his breath as he stepped back to watch what would happen. The entire staff watched from the observation room, and the tension was almost unbearable. Sierra came closer slowly, moving in a deliberate way, but her body language was hard to read. She sniffed Cedar, and her nose touched against the kitten's tiny body. For a moment that felt much longer than it actually was, everyone working there held their breath, not knowing how she was going to react. Sierra stood completely still, and her golden eyes studied the small kitten in front of her. Cedar let out a soft, plaintive cry, and Sierra's ears twitched at the sound. "Come on, Sierra," Mark whispered quietly. "You know this is your baby." The seconds ticked by painfully slowly, and nobody dared to move or make a sound. Then, finally, Sierra's expression seemed to soften. She lowered her head and began cleaning Cedar with her rough tongue, using the same careful attention she had given to her other kittens. The relief in the observation room was immediate and overwhelming. She picked up the tiny bobcat by the scruff of its neck and carried it back to where the rest of the babies were, pushing it gently into the warm pile of brothers and sisters. Seeing this made many people on the team get tears in their eyes. Even though everything had been against it, Cedar had not only lived but was now back with its family, accepted and cared for by its strong and determined mother. The other kittens seemed to welcome Cedar without any hesitation, and the way they played together showed how strong the bond between them as a family was. "She took Cedar back," Lucas said, his voice thick with emotion. "I wasn't sure she would." "Neither was I," Mark replied, wiping his eyes. But Sierra knew. She knew Cedar belonged with her. As the weeks passed and turned into months, Cedar kept growing and doing well. The kitten that had once been so fragile became a lively and bold young bobcat, and it would often be the one leading its brothers and sisters in playful adventures around the enclosed area. Sierra's constant and unwavering care had given all 5 of her kittens everything they needed to grow strong and healthy. The story about Sierra and Cedar quickly became something that represented hope and the ability to keep going even when things are hard, and it brought attention to the important work that was being done at the Hillside Nature Reserve. The reserve put up a camera that streamed live video in the bobcat's enclosed area, so people watching from anywhere in the world could see the daily lives of this bobcat family. Money started coming in from donations, which helped pay for more work to protect and conserve animals and made sure the animals would continue to be taken care of. Sierra's journey from being a rescued bobcat to becoming a devoted and loving mother showed just how strong wildlife can be and what an impact dedicated conservation work can have. Her story, along with Cedar's amazing survival, was a touching reminder of the delicate balance that exists between nature and when humans step in to help, a balance that, when it's handled with care and compassion, can create truly extraordinary results. Did you enjoy this story? What would you have done if you were in Mark and Lucas's position when you saw the struggling fifth kitten? Would you have risked going into the den right away to save it, or would you have waited to see if Sierra would let you help? Let us know in the comments below. If you liked the story, subscribe to this channel and leave a like. Thanks so much for listening. See you in the next video.